Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Cabarrus County Board of Commissions work session for October the 6th, 2014. For those of you in the audience, I would like to give a courtesy reminder to please, if you have a mobile device, please put it on silent or vibrate so that it doesn't go off during the meeting. We would appreciate it. Commissioners, the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for our work session. So at this time, may I have a motion to approve the agenda? Have a motion, is there a second? Motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all very much. First thing we're going to do, which is actually not on the agenda, but I don't think you'll have a problem with that. I'm going to call on the county manager, and he's going to introduce some new staff.
How many years, Susan? 18 years. So we're excited that she has accepted the role and will be with us permanently. Emery Ortiz is the new library director. So we're excited. Emery comes from Onslow County, and we're excited that she is coming on board with us. She's got lots of new ideas, good ideas, and we're expecting good things from her. So if you guys, Emery, you want to talk a little bit about yourself? Or?
Sure. As Mike said, I come from Onslow County. I was the assistant director there for a couple years and learned a lot and worked a lot with the military there. It was a great experience, and I'm thrilled to be here. I've got family from the area, so it's kind of like coming home, and very excited to be back.
Susan, you want to add anything? I know you like to talk so much.
Just an honor, thank you.
Good. Well, we just want to make sure you guys, while we had everyone here, we'll make sure you got to meet everybody. So, good. We're excited.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Thanks.
Well, congratulations, Susan, and welcome aboard, Emery. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Okay, Commissioners, the first item we have is Rich is going to talk about the hotel occupancy tax settlement with online travel companies. Rich?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. The summary, I think, pretty well spells out what we're dealing with. I was approached by the attorney that's been representing these online travel companies such as Travelocity and Hotels.com, the ones you see advertising on TV and elsewhere pretty regularly. They've been in litigation with Wake, Mecklenburg, Buncombe, and Dare counties since back in 2007, in which those counties had asserted that the fees that were collected by the online travel company, the OLT company, were in fact subject to their occupancy taxes in those counties. I don't think there was any dispute that the part of what was charged by those companies that actually was paid by the customer or consumer for the hotel room was subject to the tax, but that amount, the difference between the total charge and what was actually paid to the hotel for the stay was disputed as being subject to the tax. It was determined, or they contended it was a fee. So it's been in the court system since then. Just recently, the Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the online travel companies, that part was not a tax. That decision just came out last month. In the meantime, the General Assembly back in 2011 had changed the statute, which would seemingly require that all of the amount paid to the online travel company was to be subject to the tax. So there was this dispute that wasn't really part of their litigation, because their litigation dealt with what the law was at the time it was filed. That being decided in favor of the OLT company, but what is still an open issue is whether, with the change in the statute, whether that the actual fee part of the total charge is subject to the occupancy tax. So what there has been apparently discussion with those original suing counties to just try to settle the whole issue once and for all, and for the OLT companies to acknowledge that the entire amount paid to them is subject to the occupancy tax. The settlement provisions provide that that would be the agreement going forward, so that there would remain this issue about whether the fees that have been collected since the statute went into effect, the statute change went into effect, and the present time would be subject to the tax. At this point, of the 4 original suing counties, Mecklenburg, Buncombe, and Durham counties have all agreed to settle on a basis where they would not seek to collect the tax since the statute changed up to the present, but just going forward, the full amount that was charged by the OLT company would be subject to the tax. And again, those were 3 of the 4 original counties that were in the litigation. So I was approached by the attorney that represents those companies to see if what Cabarrus County would want to do. They're actually reaching out to all the counties that have an occupancy tax to try to resolve them all on the same basis and just have it start going forward that the tax would be collected on the full amount. So I wanted to bring this to your attention, certainly for discussion and some direction. Some of the other counties have not made a decision yet. Like I say, the same thing's being offered to everyone. We've communicated with Donna Carpenter, and she's fine with it from the perspective of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. But ultimately, it's the board's decision as to whether to resolve this in this matter or take some other action with reference to these taxes.
So this is not collecting any back taxes, it's just going forward from the date of an agreement or from?
It would be from the date of the agreement. It would actually start the beginning of the next month.
Okay.
Once it's approved, if
And
that's what you want to do.
Any idea what the impact actually is? I mean, is there any way to quantify?
I don't know that there's any way to easily quantify that. I think that you would almost, if they wouldn't voluntarily disclose it, that you would have to file a lawsuit, and then you could clearly get it within the pretrial discovery phase of any litigation and find out how much it is. So at this point, I do not know what that amount would be.
So they will just, every month or a month in arrears, they'll send a check? I mean, what are the mechanics of it?
Well, the agreement specifies different ways of it being collected, either being paid completely by the OLT company when they receive payment, or it being split between the hotel and them and sent separately. There'd be several ways that that's collected. I think that and I think Pam would probably know more about this than I, about the methodology of collection of the occupancy tax, but I think most of the time they just send it in, don't they?
They submit a report, and I think it's due by, maybe it's the 15th of the next month without penalty. I might have the date wrong there, but like for July, they'll submit the report and then have to turn it in by some point date in August for what they collected in the month of July.
By and large, I think the voluntary submission has worked pretty well, because I think there have only been a couple that you've sent
Gosh,
to
over
me.
our tenure, I think we had one ugly one, and I think the rest of them were resolved.
Mm-hmm. The collection part on what's been identified hasn't typically been an issue.
No, it's the penalties.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, do you have questions on this?
Rich, I understand what you're saying about us being able to really pinpoint a number in terms of needing discovery and things like that. I expect that Wake, Dare, Mecklenburg, and Buncombe have some estimate of what their collections would be in that 2.5-year period from January 2011 to October 31, just for purpose of calculating their own damages in their lawsuit. Could we extrapolate some of that data and just ballpark it and say, it's either $5 million or it's $200,000 or get some idea based on, how many hotel rooms we're selling compared to how many they're selling and what their actual damages are. And of course, it would be a ballpark, but at least that way we'd have some idea of what we were foregoing in terms of the settlement.
Sure, I'll be glad to do that. I'll need to collect it directly from the counties rather than through the OLT companies, but we can do that and then compare it to what our figures would show. I don't know that I'll have that for the regular meeting, but we can certainly try. I mean, I don't know that you have to do it. Well, in fact, I know you don't have to do anything on this right away. This was just something that was sent in essentially unsolicited because we weren't part of that litigation. So, but I can certainly gather that information and we can distribute it as soon as we get it and see what we're looking at. Those counties that have agreed to settle are basically waiving those past taxes and penalties to go ahead and settle it on this basis. So, but we can get that information. I'm sure they have some idea of what it is.
Did I understand you correctly? The counties that have already lost their first action, have all of those agreed to this, to waive past, or are you talking about counties that were not necessarily involved in that action?
No, of the 4 original counties, 2 of them have agreed to waive and to settle.
Right.
Let me get exactly, because the original 4 were Wake, Dare, Mecklenburg, and Buncombe, and the 3 that have, the 3 that have settled are, what did I do with it? Durham, Buncombe, and Wake. So Durham being one of the counties that wasn't part of the original litigation that has that presumably was contacted like we were as having an occupancy tax, and have agreed to do that.
Right.
So there are a number of others out there that apparently have not decided, or to my knowledge, according to Chuck Neely, the attorney for the OLT companies, no one has told him no yet. A lot of them are just considering it, I guess.
I would just say also that unless it's a very large amount, I would be in favor of doing an agreement like this. I think it's bad practice for the county to be suing businesses and things like that. So, and it always gets messy with litigation. So, if you can get us that number, I think that would be good. Also, it looks like we could potentially start collecting as soon as the beginning of next month. And so the faster that we can get that number back, the earlier we can start collecting revenue, which would be beneficial for our citizens.
Anything else? Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, the options are either we don't do anything, which means we don't get anything, or we sue them, and seems to me like we would only enter into a lawsuit if we thought that there were great rewards at the end of it, because you sure wouldn't go into a lawsuit over a small amount of money and spend all that in nothing personal but legal fees. I'm not a fan of spending nothing personal. I'm not a fan of giving you a whole lot of money to another attorney.
No offense taken.
But I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, if it's a lot, then it'd be worth it. But I have a feeling if it's just on the fee that they charge, that it's not going to be a huge amount, because they're already paying their regular occupancy tax. So it's just that fee portion that they're collecting. So I can't imagine it'd be a whole lot. So I think that we should move forward with it if the numbers sound good. It's not on our agenda. Just a note, it's not on our agenda yet. So when we approve the agenda for the regular meeting, we may want to go ahead and put it on there. And we could put it under new business to see if he's got the information. And if he doesn't have the information, we can always delay it to the next month. But I think the sooner we can agree to something, the sooner we can settle it. So, okay. Next items. 4.1, Ben Rose is here, and I know you have some other people with you to talk about Economic Services Enhanced Rate Plan.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing us to come present this information to you. Our purpose today is to talk to you a little bit about our strategic plan for some enhanced Medicaid reimbursement rate or money that we will be collecting over the course of this next year. We have presented some of this information to our Human Services Advisory Board last month, and they are in full support. In fact, I'll recognize Eric Williams is in the audience. He's the Vice Chair of our Human Services Advisory Board. Macon, can you go to the Deer County Director letter first before we get to that one? There you go, that one right there. This was in your agenda packet, and of course, this is the official authorization that we have received from the state that we can now collect this enhanced reimbursement rate. The state proposed this rate to help counties get to a better point with the transition in NC-FAST and the Affordable Care Act and all the issues and challenges that we've had over the past year. This was proposed earlier in the spring, but finally got official authorization on August 28th, so we weren't able to bring it to you in September. But basically, what we have in this is we normally, when we do our Medicaid activities, when our workers are doing Medicaid applications and recertifications and all that work, we get 50% back reimbursement from the federal government for that activity. Now, and this goes back to June 1st, we'll be able to get 75% reimbursement for all that activity. But as you see in the highlighted area of that letter, this enhanced rate was achieved based on the premise that counties will reinvest these funds into helping us with both the NC-FAST rollout that went on today, and I don't know how it went because I was out of the office, but that we went hard launch today with NC-FAST and Medicaid. And then again, the challenges that we've had from the ACA, there were, if you recall, there were over 100,000 untimely Medicaid applications back in May, late May. Across the state, we had about 2,200 of those. The ACA has created all kind of issues that we'll talk about. So these funds are to be used to help us get back on track and create resources to help us stay afloat during this time. The rollout of NC-FAST and the ACA coming on November 15th. These are two big events that we have coming up in the future that we are seeking some resources and help with. Megan, you can go to the PowerPoint now, and I'll hit some very, very brief highlights in this PowerPoint. If you want to go down to slide 1, there you go. Wanted to just give you a quick snapshot of the history, and of course a lot of you are aware of the history, between the recession and various generous policies that have been changed within the federal means programs, mostly Medicaid and food and nutrition. Our caseload size has just grown tremendously in Cabarrus County. As you can see, we just about practically have doubled food stamp cases over the last few years. And of course, Medicaid has gone up to where we're approaching 25,000 active cases in Medicaid now. So that gives you a little historical perspective of the trends that we've seen between Medicaid and food stamps and the challenges that we've had in that volume of caseload growth. Key business drivers, we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the issues that we've had. Of course, you're very familiar with NC-FAST and the initial rollout issues and challenges that we had, both from a performance standpoint and then a training standpoint for the workers. That has been a challenging system to get going and get going right. Now, it is going better now. There's no doubt it is better. But we've definitely, over the past year, experienced a lot of performance and challenging issues there. The Affordable Care Act, of course, is the second other issue that has really hit us hard with and basically, just to recap, is that when someone goes to that health care exchange, before they can get a subsidy, they have to basically find out if they're eligible for Medicaid, and those are the applications that get dropped to us. So that's been one of our big driving impacts as well too. One of our key business drivers. The E-Pass and of course the federal marketplace we talked about. The E-Pass has been a new system that has basically allowed the public to apply online for services, which has definitely made it more customer service friendly, which is a good thing. But of course, too, once we get those E-Pass applications, a lot of times we have to follow back up with clients because they're not complete or they are lacking information. Work Support Strategies is a state grant, and this has been really another big driver because we have basically changed the way we do business now in this area. It used to be these areas were very specialized. Workers did food stamps only, or they did Medicaid only, or they did long-term care only. Now we have gone to a more universal, generic type of a system under Work Support Strategies. The concept is one family, one caseworker. That a caseworker can basically meet all their needs. So that's been another key business driver that we've had. You can go to the next slide. I won't talk a lot about the NC-FAST ultimate goals. We've discussed these with you before. This is simply informational purposes for you. A lot of these goals initially were not being met, as you know, especially the ease, the easy part. But we have, we did have fragmented automated systems. That was a key important thing. We had one system for food stamps and one system for Medicaid and one system for child welfare. And NC-FAST, the goal is to bring all of our services under one system, and that is starting to go better. We're going to be bringing on more programs over the course of the next couple of years. Daycare, child welfare, potentially adult and aging, all these programs, all these services will eventually use NC-FAST as our case management system. So that is hopefully, still the goal that will be reached and will be effective for us. You can go to the next one. Application channels. We talked a little bit about E-Pass and what that's done, and of course the federal marketplace again has opened up another application channel for our public. We have set up an express center that is a new way that we're dealing with applications and information as well too. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we have really seen growth in the customer service side of trying to get information from the public and make it easier for them to get information to us and apply for our services. We still get applications by fax and in the mail, and that's a process that we continue to deal with. But the way the state is going, they're trying to make it as easy for the customer as possible, which is a good thing. You can go to the next slide. The ACA impacts, again, they are huge. We've had a change in the rules with the Affordable Care Act that basically has changed the way Medicaid eligibility is determined. And now it's called MAGI, which is Modified Adjusted Gross Income. And this is a new way of determining eligibility in Medicaid primarily for family and children's that basically it feels like our workers are kind of tax accountants right now, the way they do things. But it definitely looks at we determined the household size, the family size, and the income in a whole new model, in a whole new way. So that's been a huge impact that we felt from the ACA, in addition to the additional volume of Medicaid applications. There's more information that clients have to provide, so clients are learning it just as much as we are. It has been challenging. It's been a big training curve and a big learning curve for our staff. The state started training back on MAGI, I think, September of 2013 with the new rules from the Affordable Care Act. But it's definitely created, a new learning curve. The goal is to simplify eligibility determination, and we hope it will do that and accomplish that. But again, there's been that learning curve that we've had to deal with. So ACA is definitely impacting what we do and how we do business. Some timeline considerations that we just wanted to share with you. Again, today, October 6th, was a big day for us because we hard launched with NC-FAST. We have November 15th coming, which is the new enrollment period for ACA. We don't know what that will bring. Last year, again, there was over 100,000 applications for the state for Medicaid through that process. It may be that this year. It could be less. It could be more. I'm anticipating it probably will be more, quite frankly, based on everything that you're learning and hearing about the employer mandate coming in now and those kind of things as well. I think we'll probably start to see more applications. The child care, as I talked about later, we are scheduled to actually go live with that next October, and that's, again, bringing in more of our programs into NC-FAST. But there's definitely a lot of things going on between the new open exchange and the rollout today that puts us in a situation where we have a lot on our plate regarding NCFAS and determining eligibility for these services. You can go to the next one. Work support, I won't spend a lot of time on this. This, again, this is just helping us get to a point where we are more universal in how we do our business. Work support strategy supports policies and trying to simplify the process both for the client and for our staff. Our staff have really tried to embrace the universal model, even though it's been a big culture change for them. But they are working hard to try to take on those new programs and learn to be effective in that. Now, we still have people that do applications and reviews, so we have specialties from that standpoint, but they do them for all programs across the board. And they've had to really embrace that, and they've done a good job considering all the challenges that they've had over the past year and taking on these new strategies and new way to do business in a lot of ways. Go to the next slide. Now we start to get into the heart of what we're here for. This is the projected revenue that we think we will generate from the new enhanced rate. Again, this was not budgeted in this current budget year because we did not know if we were going to have the full 75% available to us. So we went into our budget template and projected that we will generate this year an additional $978,000 in revenue with this 75% rate. So that is the money that we are expected to take and reinvest into economic service strategies and staffing positions to help us deal with rollout, deal with a new and open enrollment period, and just keep everything current as well too. We're current now. Y'all, I know, remember very well the food stamp crisis and the backlog that the state had there, and it was so bad that the USDA put the state on a corrective action plan. We're current there now, but we need to maintain that. We don't need to get back and slip back in that because the feds are monitoring the state for that. So it's all about keeping things moving and keeping things current as best we can. So that's the revenue that we're looking to project at. Now, in terms of what we're kind of facing over the next 3 months, especially, conversion is one of the biggest tasks that we will have coming forward as of today. Basically, we're going to have to take, roughly 22,000, over 22,000 cases from the old system and get them into NCFAS. And that is a very labor-intensive process. The state is projecting, based on previous rollouts, about 90 minutes per case. It's not something that's easily done. It takes time. And it is one of the biggest tasks that we have. And one of our goals in our proposal is to try not to put that back on our current staff. They're dealing all they can with the caseload itself, trying to determine eligibility, trying to get the reviews done. So one of our strategies will be addressing how we deal with that level of work without it going back to our staff. So we have conversion, and then the second part of our proposal, of course, this last bullet about projections that we need 15 more IMC2s in order to process the county's workload. We have been, over the last couple of years, requesting new positions in our budget due to the volume of workload that we have. But this figure here is actually based on a state template that we got. Buncombe County kind of helped, Buncombe and MEC, I believe, kind of helped perfect it a little bit. And that is actually a number based on some data, and you have, I think, some backup material, that information in your agenda packet. But it basically took the volume of cases that we have, the time standards that it takes to process these cases. So it really breaks it out into what it takes to do each case. And then we set forth kind of where we need our staff to be. In other words, what's reasonable for our staff to do in a normal day's work? What should they be able to accomplish? And when we ran those calculations, we showed that in terms of, and we're speaking strictly processors here, staff that actually process the application and determine that eligibility or determine that review, that we actually are short at least 15 staff members in that area. Based on the volume especially. The volume has been the big driving force in this. So we, using that data, we know that we need more help. We know we need more hands on cases. and we want to talk with you about, a plan to try to get there so we can help our staff. I will say this too, our staff, they have been tremendous during this process. They have been overwhelmed, beat down. Morale is very low, there's no doubt about it. But we have staff that have really, they really care about the clients that they serve, and they want to make sure they do the best job they can. We had the State Division of Social Services director called me in August and congratulated us. We were the county of all the counties that had the highest untimely apps. We got the caseload down the quickest in the whole state, and that was our staff. Simply their dedication, their hard work, and I need to commend them on the job that they do. And of course, you know that, but I wanted to echo it for you. You can go to the next slide, Megan. These are some strategies. One thing that we try to do is we've always tried to work with the resources that we have and try to maximize those resources. So these were just a few strategies we wanted to share with you that we have done that have, helped us without a doubt, and definitely trying to help us maximize our resources. We, reallocation, reassignment of duties, retasking, these are things that you look at on a constant basis as an administrator. And we, over the last couple of years, have been able to do some very innovative strategies. One of those strategies is number 2, where we've reclassified customer support positions to income maintenance caseworker 1s. Back in 2010, when we had the reduction in force, we basically eliminated our administrative division in the agency. And part of that administrative division was customer service support, which is people that work our front desk, people that work the phones, people that work our mail room and those areas. We put those employees under the economic services division because they see 70% of the clients that come through the doors. And back then, they were processing assistants. They were clerical type positions. Well, as North Carolina FAST started to roll out and the universal model and work support strategy started to roll out, 2 years ago, we decided it was in our best interest to make those individuals income maintenance caseworker 1s so that they could triage. They could do a lot of upfront work to help the workers in the back. They can make changes right there at the front desk when someone comes in with a change. They can take information and scan it and get it to the worker, and they can do certain duties that they could not do before. And that's been a very good model that's actually been very generated a lot of interest along the state. We've had counties call us about it. Union County was here just 2 weeks ago visiting our economic services division. And that was one area that they noted, is that how we've done that triage work up front. So that's been a good strategy, and it's helped us. And it's really been amazing to see what they can do. We are looking at and the Customer Express Center that I mentioned earlier, the service center. That is something that we've worked very closely. Mike and Pam Lundy, we've been a big partnership with a lot of us to basically allow a space out in the front where clients can come in and bypass even seeing the worker by going to this Express Center and getting their needs taken care of right there. It's usually manned with an income maintenance caseworker 1 and an income maintenance caseworker 2. And they can direct them to, we have computers in our lobby so that if they are coming to apply versus seeing a worker, they can actually go to that computer and do the e-pass application. So we save time for our workers back in the back so they can keep generating and working their caseload. So that's been it's been open now 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I think, not long. And it's amazing. Every time I've been out there, there's a huge line at it. And it's great to see it being so used. The mail service is another thing that we're piloting right now, a privatization of our mail service to help that's basically allowed us to staff that Express Center in some ways because we're trying to give more hands-free time for our workers by letting the mail be handled by a private company. And most recently, just finished up on Friday, we did a health check with Northwoods, which is the document storage system that we have. And this was a great process because Northwoods talked to workers, supervisors, management, and really got a feel for how we do things. They're helping us evaluate our workflows and our business processes. And, they looked at the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they were going to help us look at ways to maximize the technology that we have. And hopefully, we can help our workers even be more efficient and create better business processes. So we've done a lot of good things to try to, help us and get us to this point. We wanted to definitely share those with you. Here's the staffing request, our strategic plan that we've got. The conversion that we talked about, that is the big one. This is the most pressing need without a doubt. You saw the man hours that it will take to do the conversion of these cases, and we don't need this to go back to our regular staff. They are overwhelmed as it is. We are understaffed that we showed you, so we don't need to add yet another duty to them. So we'd like to look at employing 15 temps. We're calling them conversion temps to basically help us convert the cases from the old system to NC Fast. And again, that's about a year process. It's finite. In a year's time, we'll have it done, and we'll never have to do conversion again. It's a one-time deal. But that is the big one. That's the most pressing one for sure. The other part, and again, this is using that $900,000 in additional revenue that we have. So we're not requesting any additional county dollars this year. And of course, that is a projection that we will monitor and ensure that we are pulling it down. But the second part of our request is to look at starting to make a down payment on those 15 IMCs with looking if we could add 4 IMC2s this year to start to help add more processors to the mix. The landscape right now is very shaky. We don't know there's still a lot of unanswered questions. So we don't want to sit here and ask you today for all 15 staff. We need to be, responsible stewards and come at you with a proposal that says this is definitely will help us, but let's see what happens with the ACA enrollment. Again, if we get 200,000 more applications this year, it might be that we need more staff quicker. Another unanswered question is the Medicaid expansion. You've probably seen a little bit of talk about potentially this state going to the Medicaid expansion under the ACA. If we do that, our volume is just going to drive that much more. I remember seeing when they were having the debate, one of the figures was there was potentially as many as 800,000 to 1 million North Carolina residents that could qualify under the expansion. So if the state elects to go to that, that will be something that we feel is the impact. So those are the two major staffing requests that we're using this new money with to fund to help us. Again, the temps are finite, 12 months, they'll be done. The IMC2s, they are reoccurring. So we understand that in the next budget year, there would be a cost to the county for that, and that's noted in the bullet up there. The other costs are basically, the office setup license because even the temps will need our Northwoods license, our system that we talked about. So we'll have some costs there as well, but all that would be covered, with the additional money that we have. So that's the crux of our strategic plan to reinvest these funds that we are required to do, and hopefully, get us to a little better place and at least let us give our staff a little ray of hope and that they will not have to mess too much with conversion and would get some help with IMC2s. I think that is the last slide. Yes.
One more thing, not to make this very complicated, but that money that's being generated is the additional 25%.
Correct.
That is not on the costs that are up here. There's still the reimbursement of these costs.
That's true. Right.
There should be additional revenue generated when you actually, if you were to hire the temps, that's not in that calculation to generate the additional 25% of money. That was on the basis of what we currently have today. So there is additional revenue here, but we felt like we were being very conservative in laying out a plan to get us to a point to keep us afloat with what's going on, because like Ben said, and I know Tricia would echo that there are so many things that are going on over there, and they've got people doing certain tasks that are keeping the workers in the back processing the cases, and they don't need to add any more duties on to anybody else. Right. And that's why that conversion thing is extremely important. And the good part of that is it's a one-time thing. You convert, and everything else would be new into the system, so you don't have to go back through that process again. So I did want to point that out.
For the 75% rate, how long is that? Is that just like 1 year?
That's a good question. It's kind of an unanswered question, but we do feel like it will be here for the course of the rest of the fiscal year. It possibly will expand or extend into the next fiscal year, but I do believe there will be a sunset period for this. One thing that we've done is the state has gotten a waiver. Basically, we've kind of gotten a bypass over the past year on reviews and recertifications. We've been clients haven't lost their benefits because their review is overdue. But we've got to get those cleaned up by the end of the year as well, and that's huge. We're doing Trish could probably speak to it more, but I know they're doing double and triple the reviews right now that they're normally used to doing. All these waivers are going to run out eventually, but we have no indication that it's pretty solid for this fiscal year and probably a little bit into next fiscal year. I would predict maybe January of 2016, that might start to be a time period you might start to see the Fed say, okay. And they've done this for other states too. We're not the only state. North Carolina is not the only state that's had untimely Medicaid applications. There's been many states that have dealt with this, and this has been kind of a strategy they've used with other states as well.
So the ones that you said that you're still processing, you said by the end of the year, end of the calendar year or end of the fiscal year?
End of the calendar year for the reviews. That's when that, correct? That's when
Yes.
that waiver ends December 31st.
Okay.
So by then, we need to have all those reviews caught up as well, too.
And the other question I have is the $978,000 that you mentioned, does that go back to July? Or
June
does that
1st.
start June 1st?
June 1st.
So
Right.
instead of starting right now, it would go
Right.
back and.
Right. We can go back and claim
Okay.
that revenue all the way back. And we have started that process. We've gotten the codes and everything and that we need to do, and they are coding their time now to that 75% rate.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was not that we didn't need to annualize that amount. Or
Right.
that it was in fact due.
Right.
And that's for this fiscal year?
For this,
that
correct.
it- Okay, through
And
the
we
end of
will-
June, that's
we will
what you
definitely-
project?
We will definitely monitor that, because again, that's a projection. That's our best estimate going into our template and playing with our numbers. We will definitely monitor it closely, and if for some reason, if it's not happening, we would come back to you and say, okay, we need to adjust this. But based on our projections, this is our best estimate of what we'll pull down.
And were there restrictions on that extra 25% to say that this is how it has to be used?
Basically, the restriction is in that letter I shared with you, that it's kind of not very specific, but it's basically, the message is, this was gotten from the federal government with the intent it would be reinvested by counties. So, and staff temporary staff is probably the biggest strategy that most counties are using, especially with conversion. That's been a very common strategy. And then trying to add new positions as they can.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions that you have that you'd like to
We're
ask?
kind of along the same line of if I understood you correctly, the temporary staff that we would hire, as you have proposed, we would also receive a 75% reimbursement on their expense as well. So we've got $130,000 not proposed to be spent in this current proposal. And that number is going to grow significantly when you get, so how you just answered partially that question, but do we have to justify the expenditure of 100% of that excess reimbursement?
I don't believe so. And you mean in terms of to the state? And
Right,
No,
right.
I don't believe so. As long as we're taking that initial revenue projection that we have, as long as
Right.
we're spending that to help us stay current, and we can prove and demonstrate that we're staying current.
Right.
I think that'll be, we haven't had to present a specific plan to the state. They haven't requested that. The last plan we did was the one when we did the corrective plan for how we were going to get the untimely Medicaid applications
Right.
down. They haven't asked for any kind of a plan in terms of, it's just, please use it. They're almost begging us to use it and spend it.
So if we run into some additional bumps like we have in the past, this leaves us a little cushion to hire some
Yes,
additional temp
potentially.
staff to take
Yes.
care of some of those issues.
Yes, potentially, because again, we're not even counting the revenue that they would generate by
Right.
hiring
And the-
them and bringing them in.
And the steps that we took last year to try to deal with that, we didn't get additional reimbursements to cover that when we had to hire some.
We
temp.
did. We actually,
did?
but it
Okay.
was the lower level.
At the lower rate.
Yeah, it was at
right.
a lower rate, but, and again, the 75% is only when they're doing Medicaid activities. So
Uh-huh.
if they're doing food and nutrition, it's still 50% there.
Right.
Or work first, it's still the regular reimbursement rate. But if a worker is working in Medicaid in any form or fashion, we can get, with a case, we can get 75%.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Larry, did you have anything? Chris? You're on their board still, aren't you, on that one? Anything you want to add?
Ben, I wanted to tell you congratulations on that phone call that you mentioned. That's
Oh,
great
thank you.
news. I know that you and your staff and Trish worked tremendously hard during the course of the fall of last year and the holidays and things like that, and I really appreciate all the effort that you put in. I know during that time in particular, it's a difficult time to manage,
Yeah.
and that's a great accomplishment for you.
Thank you.
So essentially, what do you know how many other states receive a 75% reimbursement rate compared to 50?
Off the top of my head, I don't know how many states were. I think Tennessee was one state that maybe has gotten that from the feds. That's something that's worked out at the state level.
Yeah.
They obviously, it's like I said, it's basically a waiver. They request a waiver and it's granted for that period. But I know I did hear Wayne refer that some other states had used this as a strategy to help them get resources to get the workload as current as it could be.
Well, the reason that I asked that question is just that might determine the likelihood of whether these will be ongoing. I looked specifically at your letter, and it said state fiscal year 2014 and 15 and ongoing was the exact quote from it, so who knows what that means.
Right.
If a lot of states are receiving 75% rate and have been for a long time, maybe that's indicative that this will last for a little while. If there's very few states receiving it, or if the period is short, maybe it won't last for very long. So that would be something that I'd be interested in knowing.
I think any states that are receiving it's been a recent event. It's not been a long, because a lot of this has been driven by the ACA. The ACA has been the big driver for states getting behind in Medicaid untimelies, and again, even the Medicaid Center for the Feds, they haven't done what the USDA did. They didn't come in and say, by this date, you've got to have it done or we're going to withhold your funding. They actually said, we'll give you additional reimbursement to try to help you get there. So it's been a little different from the USDA side. But could that happen? That could still potentially happen, even in that area.
So essentially what we're talking about here is that our rate has increased 50% to help transition from the old system to the new system,
Mm-hmm.
right? And primarily the driver of that is this 22,000 cases that we've got to transfer from the old system to the new
Right.
system. But we must have, as a county, budgeted something for that transition because we knew it would happen. I know we budgeted some last year for
Mhm.
the transition to NC Fast, and
Mhm.
this was not something that came up after our budget discussion. So do you know about how much is budgeted from the county's perspective to fund this transition? Because something was funded there prior
Right.
to.
We've been using the temps that you're talking about, that we did in our regular budget process. They've been helping us in the upfront process with intake, which is basically, they were a big strategy in how we did get that call from Mr. Black, because those temps basically were able to do some upfront work for our staff so that they could basically process all day. They took applications, and that's how we're still using them. Because there's still 5,000 or 6,000 untimelies across the state, so it's still a tight situation, and we feel like those staff are being best used to help the processors. The conversion is something that we knew would come, but we didn't have a lot of details about it because it's converting differently from the food stamp system, which was a little more automatic, maybe is a better way to say it, or it was not quite as labor intensive. This, unfortunately, has ended up being a very labor intensive process, which we didn't really have that foreshadowing knowledge. We're just starting now. That 90-minute time frame is something that's basically been learned from other counties that have gone through rollout recently. So it's kind of, the conversion is a big hurdle that we have going forward. And if we can keep that off of our regular staff and let the current temps that we have right now do what they continue to do, I think we would be in good shape, and that would be a best use of that extra revenue that we're getting is those conversion temps.
And did you budget additional overtime? I know that you had to use a tremendous amount of overtime last
Yeah.
year, and that was one of the things that was very taxing on our employees. So did you budget
Yeah.
some of that for this year?
We really didn't. We really don't have overtime budgeted per se because we don't really pay overtime. We pay comp time. And overtime obviously has been something that's been, our employees have been working Saturdays and Sundays and long hours on a regular basis. That's definitely a strategy that we've talked with HR about and had some discussions and did some initial analysis, but we haven't gotten to a point yet where we feel comfortable with a proposal to say, would we pay overtime for a certain amount or so forth? And that's a strategy we can definitely take a look at further. And I know that our fiscal liaison, Cameron, has run some initial numbers, and hopefully we can bring that back to the table to look at, is that an option? Because that is something that I think staff would appreciate, definitely, based on the work that they do.
Well, what I would like to see, and maybe you can help with this also, Pam, is, we've got this baseline level of work that must get done, and then you've got this increase that's required based on a transition, and then we'll likely go back down. And so we knew that this increase was here, and to some extent, as a county, we took county funds out of taxpayers' dollars and used some of those funds to meet that increase in work, right? We scaled up something. And so now that we've got additional revenue coming in to pay for this increase, then I would like to see this revenue that we had budgeted to go for that exact same work to go back to the taxpayers and drop some of that out and use this money certainly to pay for this increase in work. But we've budgeted some money already to do that out of the taxpayers' hands, and I'd like to see that money go back to the taxpayers, not actually into their hands, but back into the coffers of the taxpayers, so that otherwise it's being paid for twice, right? It's being paid for by general county funds, and then also these designated federal funds that are coming in additionally. So, if we could get some sort of a report about what we had budgeted in order to pay for this transition in our budget, that would be useful.
We have budgeted, you remember the exact
Are
amount?
you referring to in the FY15 budget, what we budgeted for this?
Yes.
We didn't
No.
budget anything for this in the FY15 budget. We did have temps, as he was referring to, that were to continue through the process for the food stamp system, and they didn't get started as early as they thought they were going to get started, so they had additional monies that were left over, and those monies were reappropriated. And as they're indicating, those people are doing intake. And we had conversations about taking those temps from intake and putting them here into the conversion process, but then now you've got a new gap, the intake that's not being taken care of. So, in evaluating everything that we have here, because we didn't know when we were working on the budget process if we'd ever get the 75%.
Right.
So we didn't budget anything for this in hopes that we would get the 75%, and that's why we waited until now to come before you, because we had nothing to cover this cost until this money was generated here. Now, the temp money that was budgeted last year did generate additional revenues that did go into the coffers last year for the temp work that was done last year, because it was not part of the original revenue budget. So some of that money did go back into the county's coffers last year. But as far as this year is concerned, any of that temp money that was reappropriated, the monies generated off of that would go back into the coffers because those revenues weren't budgeted.
How were we, so let's assume that we didn't get the 75%, that it was 50%. How are we going to fund the transition of 22,000 cases from the old system to the new system?
When we did our budget, we were anticipating that it would go live in March. So we had temps in the budget for last year, but we ended up having to use those temps for the ACA because the drop of cases was so crazy, and that's why we put them on intake. We didn't need them for conversion, but that's how we got ourselves caught up for the application piece. Now, in a month, we're going to be going back through ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and we expect that increase to be even worse than it was last year. So the fact that conversion is taking so much longer, when we converted food stamps, it took maybe 30 minutes, and they did the process totally different. So we were supposed to go to conversion in March, and then they had to pull everything back, which, if you remember, we were here presenting what a terrible mess they created and the backlog that they created by pulling out cases, and we had to re-enter them into the old system. But we did, for that process, get 75% as well, and that's what the temps were drawing down. So we did, I guess, reinvest some of the money that the temps got from the first go-round. Our current temps are continuing to do the intake piece to keep us caught up. We just barely scraped by in August to get us caught up, but we're having to stay afloat. And as Ben said, the conversion was not going to take 90 minutes when we originally projected. So now, when you look at it, we did not project that we would need 15 temps. And 15 temps, if you divide it out, will not fully cover what we convert each month. Each temp is, without breaks or anything, we expect that they can do 5.3 conversions per day. So when you extrapolate that out, they're only going to be able to do about 1,600 of our cases. And we have at least 1,800 a month that we have to convert. Plus, if a client has a change, we have to convert those as well. So our workers are going to be converting as well. So we've just tried to hit the bulk of it because we know existing staff cannot do this. I mean, I love the fact that you're talking about paying overtime, but they're burned out. I mean, they can't work anymore. So temps are really where we're trying to go with this. And I understand, reinvesting to the taxpayer, and I do believe with the additional revenues that we'll gain, there'll be plenty that can be reinvested to the taxpayer because they are going to be drawing down additional revenues. And we will only use them if we get converted sooner. Then, of course, we would let them go. But at this point, we're 3 months, almost 3 months behind. So they're going to, in the next 3 months, we have to get caught up. So the conversion over the next 3 months is going to be, almost triple what we normally do. So our staff is going to be heavily involved in conversion over the next 3 months. So they too will be drawing down the 75%. And then starting in January, we hope to be, flush because that's where we're expected to be even. And then the temps will take over conversion fully starting in January if you approve them, which we really hope you will because staff cannot do this. And a lot of what we're doing here is we didn't have the information. Just this month, we've had 3 sets of instructions on how to do conversion because the state is still playing with the system. So, I mean, we're dealing with unknowns daily. We went hard launch today, but workers had errors. They couldn't get into the cases and do the work that they needed to. So we hope that over the course of the week, things will start evening out and we'll be able to get in there and fully do the work. But they're learning as well. So, 90 minutes, maybe, after 3 or 4 months, it'll skinny down to 60 minutes or, once you get experience. But we've talked to counties who went live in August, and they're still saying 90 minutes. So it's just a matter of there's a lot of keystrokes and a lot of data that has to be entered.
Let me say specific. I was not necessarily suggesting overtime or not. I was just trying to figure out if you had budgeted money for overtime.
Right,
I think my big picture point is in June when we did our budget, we knew that there was 22,000 transitions that would have to occur, whether it was 30 minutes or 90 minutes. That was going to be 22,000 cases that caused some additional work for your employees. And we did not have information that we were going to get the 75% reimbursement rate. So we were going to have to accomplish that some way without receiving the 75% reimbursement rate. We had to have budgeted for it some way. And now that we've received the 75% reimbursement rate, we've, in our budget, already paid for some of that 22,000 because we had to. We couldn't count on this 25% additional money. So when this 25% additional money comes in for the same work for which we already budgeted, then I would like to see the taxpayers essentially get reimbursed for them fronting that money is what I'd like to see. So however that looks, that's what I'm looking to see.
Okay, we can get that figure. The figure is for the temps that we had planned. We budgeted for temps in addition to the ones we had and reappropriated for this year. There was temps appropriate or budgeted for this year.
Right.
We can get
Right.
that number for you.
Okay, Chris, do you want to come back to you?
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions. I mean, I understand it, and, you guys are put in a position of, having to accomplish this, and I've spent time at the Department of Social Services as your liaison, and I think you guys do an excellent job, and I know you have a difficult job with everything you do, whether it's these transitions or new applications and how things have changed. Most of my opinions have nothing to do with the process, but more about the policies and that come from the federal government and the state government, and more of the programs itself, which I have no authority over, so I won't go into that. But it's interesting how in the past 7 years the cases have dramatically increased, and I think we're headed in a bad direction. But that's, like I said, that's nothing that we can do here. So, thank Thank you.
I know that in previous discussions, when we talked about the temps, there was a training period to get them up to speed. Do you anticipate for these 15 temps that you're requesting and the other 4 positions, how long of a training period will it take? You went live today, and so, I mean.
Yeah, definitely for the temp. So, and of course, with permanent positions, it all depends on who you hire, of course. But for the temps, once you start the process, it can be 2 to 4 weeks to get them even secured, which is a time frame in itself. And then, yes, there'll be, probably about a week training at least once we got them onboarded.
And with this model, we've got identified space with IT where the whole group would be in one area, and we're assigning a lead worker or supervisor to be with them because this is critical. We know if a person doesn't get their Medicaid approved, they could end up with a life-threatening situation, whereas in food stamps, we were able to find a food pantry or do a food drive. We can't do that with Medicaid. So we're assigning folks to be there with them during that process so that they will get additional training as they're actually doing the work. And we're using the state model to train so that we've got some really clear job aids and things like that for them. And they're going to be very focused on this task alone. They're not going to have to learn all of eligibility. So it will be a little more streamlined than in some past trainings.
And the reason I'm asking is, our regular meeting isn't for 2 more weeks. And we don't, it's been a lot of information to read through. You had lengthy information that you presented to us for us to read through before today. So I guess what I'm leading to is that, it's on our agenda for us to approve it in 2 weeks. Is that acceptable for 2 weeks out to start the hiring process of 2 to 4 more weeks out just to start hiring and then training? Or is it something, and I don't know, Commissioners, if you'll chime in, I don't know what your opinion is, but I'm just listening to what they're saying. If they went live today and the conversion's coming up and everything, is it something that we would want to go ahead and take some action on today instead of waiting for 2 weeks? Obviously, there's a need. The funds are there to cover them.
There's definitely a need, because we did roll out today, and the 4 positions are critical because, as we talked about, we're 15 positions short, but those are not as critical in terms of a time frame as the conversion temp. So yes, I would, that would be a definite assistance to us to help the process move quicker.
And I didn't talk to Ben about this in advance. I was just listening to what he was saying. So just to say that, does anybody Commissioners, do you have any comments or anything about if we go ahead and suspend the rules and move forward with this today, or based on the information you've read and that you've heard?
Madam Chairman, I'd be happy to make a motion to suspend the rules so that we could authorize the hiring of the 15 temps. I feel like that certainly that money is there to pay for expenses like this. Whatever they had previously budgeted, I don't expect it to be more than the difference between what the 15 temps cost and what the total amount that they'll receive back. So I think from an accounting perspective, we can work on the rest of this at a later point, but the 15 temps are going to be reimbursed, and so I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Can I ask you another question? Because the third item down there you go. The licenses, computers, and office setup. They're going to need that for the temp workers. Would you be willing to include that? I know first we need to suspend the rules, but
right.
With that, they're not going to be able to operate without having equipment.
I think we should do it for, do we need to purchase all of those things? Because what we're going to end up with is temps. We're going to buy, potentially $150,000 or $170,000 worth of equipment for temps. At which point, at some point, we will no longer need the temps, and then we're going to have $150,000 or $170,000 worth of equipment. Is there a way that we can change that so that we're not left with the costs of those hard equipment costs up front when we don't have the employees to match them anymore?
Well, I think, when we naturally do position requests for temps or even new positions, we automatically include that setup. IT may have some computers available to us. I don't know for sure. The license, though, you have to purchase. And of course, you adjust that, so when those temps went away, that need for that license would go away. The office setup, I don't know what we have in surplus or things of that nature that we could make some modifications there.
Maybe if you could approve it up to the 171, and what we'll do is we'll only need the 15. They already have cubicles, so the 4 that were being purchased, the 4 positions would need more stuff than the people who are temporary. But we can go through and assess with IT to find the cheapest route we can go through for as far as the temps are concerned to get the equipment that we can use and not have to worry about what will happen to the equipment afterwards. Another thing that also happens if they were to have to purchase the equipment, they take those old that computer would be about a year old when the temps were finished, and they just put it into the cycling program as they replace people's computers. So that would alleviate having to purchase more computers later on, because they'd have a surplus of 15 of them to put back into circulation with the other employees. But we will definitely take the cheapest route that we can go through to make that happen. So whatever number you guys feel comfortable with that, we will definitely work with IT, because like I said, we're going to use workstations that are already set up on the other side of the room. We had them evaluate the cheapest way that we can get those old workstations back up and running without having to do much of anything. We found chairs and other areas for some of the cubicles, so I think we can work something out in that direction.
So
Yeah,
I think
first you need to move a motion to suspend the rules. So,
I was going to answer your question, but
Okay.
I will make a motion to suspend the rules then.
okay, is there a second? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor of suspending the rules say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now,
I will make a motion to basically amend our budget to allow for the hiring of 15 temps as requested, and then licenses, computers, and office setup for up to 15 workstations to match the temps. And Ben, I know that y'all do a tremendous job of keeping your budget, so we're going to trust you that you'll work your hardest to keep those costs as low as possible. I don't know what the total number wouldn't be 171 because we're excluding out those 4, so I don't want to put a total number on there, but we'll authorize that and hope that you can do something for us in terms of saving some money.
Thank you.
okay,
Just
That-
approve the appropriate budget revision,
Yeah.
and we'll find out what the right number is.
with the appropriate budget revisions, correct? Okay, yes. You nodded your head, yes. Okay, so there is a motion. Is there a second to the motion? Which I will gladly second the motion. I think that's a good way to go. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Then for the regular meeting, we'll talk about that in a minute, but we leave on the IMC2s to get more information back on that. And we'll leave that on for 2 weeks, and then they'll get that information that you requested, and we'll see if we have enough information at that time to go forward. So, okay. Or to make a decision, let's put it that way. So, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, 4.2, transportation. Ben, are you staying, or are you getting
I'm gonna
up?
let Ann have this one.
Okay, and Bob's coming up?
Y'all had enough of me.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting us come before you this evening to talk about our annual ROPE grant, which is our Rural Operating Assistance Program from the state of North Carolina. This year, we will be receiving for the 3 funding programs, Rural General Public, Elderly and Handicap, and Employment, an amount of $173,416, which is $37,365 reduction from last year. We are asking that you will hold a public hearing at the October meeting, accept and sign the certified statement and the associated budget amendment, and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Commissioners, any questions on this particular item? And again, we'll have to have a motion to set the public hearing for 2 weeks. Steve, do you do transportation?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have anything you want to lead off with?
Well, I think certainly and we have gone through extensive discussion in the past about this. This is one of those grants that does not require a match from the county, and we are able to use it to match some of the other services that we provide and some of the other grants that we receive. And, you know, as Bob mentioned, it's down substantially from last year. Our county has been reclassified as large urban, which has affected a number of different ways, not only the county, but also the municipalities as well, Concord and Kannapolis with the bus line. And so I think there's still a process of sorting through some of that, but it's certainly advantageous to us to pursue this, as we have in the past.
Larry? Chris? Jason? Okay. We do need a motion to set the public hearing for our regular meeting, October 20th, at 6:30 or as such time can be heard, I think is what we normally say. So may I have a motion to set the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Susan Farrington's. Come back up.
This evening you have in front of you an updated construction and renovation project ordinance and a related budget amendment. This is to, we're going to increase this for our radio equipment purchases. We have some new revenues and some existing revenues that we need to catch up. This is one of the multi-year funds that doesn't get updated at the yearly budget process. So we come before you tonight to increase the revenues and expenses so the new radio equipment can be purchased for this fund. Any questions?
Any questions, commissioners? I know I was out at Mount Pleasant not too long ago. I always think it's interesting which carriers are on the different cell towers, because apparently my carrier is not on that one, because I had a terrible time trying to send out score updates to a couple friends that weren't at the ball game that night. So it's not Sprint. That's who's listed here. But anyway, I always think that's interesting. So did anybody have any questions about, we've been knowing about the equipment and everything for a while? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Paul, you're a busy man. I saw you on the news this morning. I believe. So you've been working.
That's not always a good thing.
Well, that would be true. I won't disagree with you, but welcome. You're going to talk about some vehicles for the Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, we had $270,000 budgeted for 10 patrol vehicles this year. We put a bid out for sedans and for the utility vehicle. Hilbish Ford had the lowest price for both, and we would just like to go forward with being able to take the bid from Hilbish Ford and purchase those vehicles.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Always good to keep it local, right? Okay. No questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, the next thing is we have our regular meeting agenda, so if you'll flip over the page and look that over real quick. Let's move under consent item number 1. Let's move that down. That's where we just did part of that. Since we're going to get more information, let's move that to item number 2 under new business, if that's okay. And we'll see if we get additional information that we need on those 4 positions. Is there anything else that you see that we need to move? Or if not, I'd accept a motion that we approve the regular meeting agenda with that one change.
Madam Chairman, one issue that I wanted to bring up, and I was going to bring it up in general comments, but it might be appropriate for this discussion here in terms of our agenda. I know that several of us have received emails or correspondence in regard to this CMUD permit issue and the Diener application. And I know that Mike and I had talked about that on the telephone, and he said basically our only At this stage, the best way that we can proceed is to request a public hearing, and I know you've taken care of doing that. Is that going to be something that we can get scheduled for our regular meeting in October? Because it's something that I think
Yep.
at least the people that I speak with would like to start discussing, and I think there's a lot of
Sure.
uncertainty out there with respect to this issue, including my own knowledge, and I would like to have some more knowledge about it, and I know other people would also, so.
Sure. I have spoken with the gentleman at the State Department of Environmental and Natural Resources that I did on your behalf petition for the public hearing. They are granting that. We will have a public hearing. My understanding that Rowan County has asked for a public hearing as well, for similar another part of the same application. They have not set the date yet, nor the location. They're not sure if they're going to do one hearing or two. If they do one, it'll be down in that area right on the county line there. I think those are the other locations across the county line. But he said that he would notify us as soon as they set the date and the time and the location, so that we can use our opportunities to get the word out as well, in addition to whatever they send out as a state. So, but it has not been set yet.
Is there any possibility that we can have them set that public hearing at one of our meetings so that we can record it and take questions from the commissioners and things like that? It really, I don't have a very good grasp of all that's involved in it, but it sounds like there are some very strong feelings, at least on the side of some landowners out there. And I talked to State Representative Pittman about it also, and he said that there are potentially some other things that we could do, and I just want to make sure that
Sure.
our people in our county feel like they have some representation with that group, and maybe that's all that we can do, but I would like to get as much information out to the public.
I can formally make that request to them. I know they don't typically combine the meetings with the boards because it is their public hearing, but I can make the request. And I have offered our building here to hold the public hearing. They try to do it a little bit closer to the sites, but they didn't rule out using this building as well. So I'll make that request and keep you guys informed of how they respond. Sure.
And Rich was kind enough to remind me, we talked about the hotel occupancy tax settlement. Do we want to put that under consent? Well, we want to put that under new business. We talked about that for consent, which, tell me where you want it to go.
Well, I think you wanted to review the figures, I think. So it seems like it might be more appropriate to put it under new business.
Okay.
Since there may be some discussion.
Well, let's make
I'll
it.
try to get those in advance and try to circulate them before the meeting if we can.
Okay, let's make that item under new business. Right now, we would have the rope grant first, and then second would be Economic Services Enhanced Rate Plan. Third, we'll do the hotel OLT. Fourth and fifth would be those two tabled from September. How's that? Does that work for everybody? Okay, may I have you're finished at that point? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, please? A motion and a second. Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Commissioners, that's all we have for today, so may I have a motion to adjourn? Motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.